Evolution. Evolution, by its definition, is the change in the characteristics of a species over several generations and relies on the process of natural selection. While this is still a widely debated topic today, it was a crime during the early 1900s. In a court case called Scopes Monkey Trial, an attempt to change the law regarding evolution and its discussion in school quickly became an epic battle between religion and science. While this case was a temporary victory for the Christian community of Dayton, Tennessee, it proves the impact and power of communication during judicial hearings. Ultimately, the communication implemented in this case showed how public opinion can sway the decision and how communication can be used to pursue others by exposing them to both sides of this argument. This is evolution, how communication affected the outcome of the Scopes Monkey Trial. While these concepts might not be difficult for us to grasp within the 21st century, back in the 1900s, mere mention of evolution within certain states was an outrageous crime bordering on heresy. Our story begins in 1925 and relies heavily on communication. But first, let's meet the cast of our show, and what a show it was. Darrow, a nationally renowned lawyer who became famous from his defense of the Leopold and Leop murder trial, will be cast as the defense lawyer. John Scopes, our protagonist science teacher who wants to allow his students to learn about Darwin's theory of evolution, will play our defendant. William Bryan Jennings, a three-time Democratic nominee for president and a deeply devoted deacon, will play our lead prosecutor. John T. Ralston will play the biased judge.
And our jury will be played by a like-minded flock of fiercely faithful Baptists and Presbyterians.
Now that you know our cast, let's set the stage of our play. In March 1925, the Tennessee legislature had passed the Butler Act.
And no, I'm not talking about the "how may I help you, m'lady" kind of butler.
It made it a crime for any teacher in the public schools of Tennessee to teach any theory that denies the story of the divine creation of man as taught in the Bible, and to teach instead that man had descended from a lower order of animals. Somehow, many of the men of religion in those days felt that such an origin for man was destructive of the religious beliefs that were so vital in the life of many people.
In 1925, John T. Scopes, a high school teacher, was accused of violating Tennessee's Butler Act. While Scopes himself allegedly claimed to have never taught the lesson regarding evolution, this trial still intentionally occurred. This trial was deliberately staged for two reasons. One, John Scopes' attempt to challenge the Butler Law so that evolution could be taught in public schools throughout Tennessee, and two was Dayton's town officials' desire to attract publicity to the small town, which had a decrease in population and was facing economic concerns. With the help of the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, he incriminated himself deliberately so the case could have a defendant on record. Their objective was to overturn this law so that the study of evolution could take place in schools across the South. This was quite the goal at the time, as the defendant was fighting an uphill battle in the America's Bible Belt. During the early 1700s, ministers traveled throughout the southeast of the United States to spread Christianity. This period is often referred to as the Great Awakening. Farming communities in the southern states flocked towards these ministries and adopted their fire and brimstone approach to Christianity. This religion took root and spread throughout the South. The outcome of the ministers' work resulted in an estimate of 75 to 80% of the population attending churches, which were built at a headlong pace. This strong devotion to religion sets the stage for our phenomenal trial. This ultimately made the case a challenge, as the public opinion had already established the victor long before the judge's gavel was even lifted. Our stage is set, so lights, camera, action.
William Jennings Bryan, who was a quite well-respected figure on a national scale, agreed to be the lead prosecutor against Scopes. He claimed, like most in the state, that evolution was a lie that went against the word of the Lord. Clarence Darrow represented the ACLU.
Well, Clarence Darrow is a brilliant lawyer, of course, and he was great on cunning in making moves that's unexpected, like he did in the Lop Leopold case, in which he waived the jury. And he was a brilliant lawyer, of course, and he was great on.
Within the case, there were three important factors where communication led to the victory of the Christian majority. The first can be found within the trial transcripts, where Darrow humiliates Bryan on stand when asked if he believes everything in the Bible is literal. Listen to this segment of the transcript. You claim that everything in the Bible should be interpreted? I believe everything in the Bible should be accepted as it is given there. Some of the Bible is given illustratively. For instance, ye are the salt of the earth. I would not insist a man was actually salt, or that he had the flesh of salt, but is used as salt as saving God's people. The Bible says Joshua commanded the sun to stay still for the purpose of lengthening the day, doesn't it? And you believe it? I do. Do you believe at the time that the entire sun went around the earth? No, I believe that the earth goes around the sun. But what do you think that the Bible itself says? Don't you know how it was arrived at? I never made a calculation. A calculation from what? I could not say. From the generations of man? I would not want to say that. What do you think? I do not think about things I don't think about. By contradicting the man, Darrow was able to prove that his conversations and argument lacked merit. The second factor that led to the procreationism victory can be seen in how the town of Dayton communicated the trial. Again, being in the Bible Belt, the good book had such power within the community. Because this find was challenged in the court, it gained a lot of local attention. This case was very much intentional, as it was designed to capture the community's attention, and boy did it work. The city's mayor used the trial to make money by advertising this event in newspapers and playing the trial on radio. The city made this quite the public scandal that everyone wanted to be a part of. They managed to sell hot dogs, lemonades, and popcorn to the crowds of people that observed the trial. Chimpanzees performed in sideshows, mocking the nature of the trial. They even used pages from the Bible to make stuffed monkeys to sell to the children. This performance was a family affair. This was the first case to be broadcasted on the. Much attention to the small town, people flocked to Dayton from all around to watch the show. The third and final factor that led to the anti-evolution victory was the certain striking of testimonies. After days of consistent back and forth, some key decisions had been made. Due to the public outcry communicating in favor of creationism, Judge Ralston made the choice to strike all scientists' testimonies from the record. While those listening at home managed to hear the accounts of the scientists, the removal of their perspective from the recorded transcript communicated who was going to win the case. By eliminating so many elements in favor of the prosecution, the defense had no chance of victory. The climax came on July 20th when Darrow called on Bryan to testify as an expert witness for the prosecution on the Bible. In the trial's aftermath, Tennessee prevented the teaching of evolution in the classroom until the Butler Act was repealed in 1967. Loss on the side of the scientists, Scopes' trial increased American awareness and interest in the issue of teaching theology and/or modern science in public schools. Though the debate over teaching evolution in American public schools still continues today, the Scopes trial proved to be highly influential in American culture and study theology at the University of Chicago Graduate School. The Scopes trial is a method of communication. It shows ways to communicate without being harsh or excuse anybody before reasoning it. It continues to attract inquiries and visitors from all over the United States and many parts of the world.